the anger that they have toward the left, I think a lot of it is based on, now this is a charge against the left that they make that is accurate, where they say that, well, all you folks on the left, you just look down on us and you condescend to us. And it's like, brother, how can I not? I can't, I mean, you guys are fucking morons. Now, like, I will gladly admit that sometimes we can be quite arrogant, but I can't speak for everyone else. I've earned the right to be goddamn arrogant. Right. I know what I'm talking about, and you don't. Like, this is not a discussion between two informed equals. This is one person who knows what they're talking about, and another person who I would be surprised could spell their name. Yeah, and so I'm talking to a 4-year-old. Of course, you're gonna feel condescension. So then they get mad about it. And that's what I don't understand. I don't get that at all. Because what have you heard this? I'm sure you have, where you're talking to these folks and they'll say stuff like, well, like, this usually happens with people like in real life, and you're like, why are you a conservative? And they'll say, look, you know more about politics than me, but it's like, all right, then why are you arguing with me? Like, what's this argument about then? Like, if someone came to fix my car, I don't know shit about cars, and I'm not going to argue with them when they tell me what's wrong and say, I don't appreciate your condescending stuff. I don't know fuck about cars. So of course they're going to be condescending. If I talk back, I don't know. I just don't get that mindset, man. I don't understand it.
Right. No, it's it's feeling threatened by someone being intelligent, someone being informed.
They're not used to that. Yeah.
They're threatened by it. Like the very nature of it itself. Like they see it as like, you're so smart, but I don't want anything to do with it. Like, you know what I mean? Like I've seen that a lot where like someone will be arguing with me. Like back when I was a Christian, I would argue with atheists often because like I liked doing that. And so that's probably why I am the way that I am now. Like I liked engaging with it and like trying to convince atheists. And of course I always got my ass handed to me. And I never thought that I had my ass handed to me. And I think that that's the issue. People don't realize that they're actually having their asses handed to them, but they don't know that. They can't see that. And they don't accept that. They just get angry. And what they do is they just scoff it off and like, ugh, you're just, and then they fall into those caricatures again. You're a caricature in my mind, and I'm going to dismiss you now. Like we've had this whole discussion, you're making way too much sense, and now I'm going to dismiss you, and all the thought stopping like techniques that are in their brain, mechanisms that are in their brain start to work, and they're like, we're done, and they shut down, and they move on, and they either double down or like low key kind of think about it. I double down, and I'm like, I'm right. Like if you like I am right, there's no talking to someone like that. So even if you show you were clearly wrong, they're already going into it like I am correct. So nothing you can do, you know? And so often when I'm discussing things with these people, because I love discussing this shit with like people who are in that mindset, because it is like fascinating to me. And
it really is.
It's like, why are you shutting down right now? Like what you're starting to shut down. Why are you? And I try to like get them before they do, so they can like sort of self-reflect of like, why am I shutting down? And like, sometimes it ends with someone being like, never mind. Like they're kind of nice to me after that. They're kind of like, I like try to get them to not do that thing where they just write me off right away, you know, but it's so hard because it's just so instantaneous.
It's just so wild. First, I want to mention you talk about you used to argue with atheists as a Christian. That's kind of fascinating because when I was a Christian, the one thing I would never do is argue with atheists. I remember like that was kind of a rule I had, not because, you know, I was afraid. I argued all the time. It was like, you know, just like how I'm born. But I didn't see the point because if we couldn't agree on the foundation that God exists, what is it to argue about? Like, even then I knew I couldn't prove God existed. I couldn't get into that argument. So I was like, I'm not going to, so I never argued with atheists because I just didn't see how it would go anywhere.
Right. That's correct. So I'm like, if I'm correct, I should be able to do this.
I
thought I was right. Like I had that whole mindset of like, this is the right way to live. This is like, you know, the truth. Like if it's the truth, it shouldn't be, you know, Like, I didn't realize I couldn't prove God. You know, I didn't think about all that. Like, it's like I didn't accept that premise of like I can't prove God. Like, I would like try to do it in my own way of like, this is like all the things that I'm sure you've experienced many times, like personal experiences, personal anecdotes, what the Bible says, like
the power of God will win them over. Of course, yeah. You don't. And when you were talking about when you like whenever you argue with religious folks and how they dig their heels in more, especially if you do it online. Like doing it online is very, because no one wants to be embarrassed publicly, and it's unfortunate that people think this way, because if you're in an argument, literally the worst thing that could happen is that you're wrong. That's the worst possible outcome.
Yeah.
Then you're like, oh, okay, well, I learned something. I was incorrect. That's it. And you can just move on. I mean, like, it happens to everyone. Like, people are wrong all the time. It can happen to literally anybody. Happens to some of us a lot less often than others. But I mean, it's like anyone can be wrong. If that's just part of being a person, you shouldn't be afraid of it. But people really are. The worst thing, I didn't think about this, but until just now, where you're talking about these outcomes, like the worst one is actually a lot more frightening, is that you could be turned into a bullshit like preacher story about talking to an atheist. Because I'm sure you guys remember these. Like, I remember there's one I had. So my pastor in Tabernacle Baptist Church in Lebanon, Missouri, Hal Hightower, he would tell this story all the time. And he would say that he met an agnostic, and they were arguing about, religion and faith and everything. And he said, halfway through the conversation, he goes, hey, hold on. You're an agnostic, right? The guy said, yeah. He goes, well, the root word for agnostic is the letter A, which means no in Greek, and, gnosis, which means knowledge in Greek. So that means you don't know anything. And the guy said, how about that? And look, I was as dedicated, I was like 13. I was like, that did not happen. That is fucking ridiculous. I mean, even as a child, and he told the story all the time. I still remember it like 30 years later. And I just like some of these like pedantic, like, I know it's hilarious. So go ahead.
I think they have a mic drop. It's like a fucking, like, that is the truth. And it's
I was embarrassed for him. I was like, look, I can't be the only one in this auditorium that think that story is absurd. I refuse to believe that. And this one didn't come from my pastor, but I don't know if you remember Josh Feuerstein. He's from way back in like the Facebook days. He's a really big dude with a beard, and he wore a red hat like before Trump. So that wasn't even with Trump or everything. I know it's just funny it worked out that way, but he had all these Facebook videos that went viral, like circa 2012 or something like that, where he would take down evolution and abortion and stuff. And he was at January 6th, I saw, and interesting enough, but I know, so weird
he went
guy.
Right in. He's like, no, the red hat works well.
I know, it went perfect for him. And I remember him talking about how one way you could prove that creation was real, that God created the universe and everything. He's like, because we call it the universe, which is like in Latin or Greek or whatever, it's turns out to like one word or something that means it's the word of God. That means it's real. Or do you remember I can't keep thinking of these because they're so dumb. They keep happening. The Duck Dynasty guy.
Shit! People love the Duck Dynasty guy in my churches. Like all the churches I went to, they're fucking Duck Dynasty dudes. Yeah.
I remember he was doing an interview and he said two things that were wild, not a pocket. The first thing he said was, well, he's the old guy, like Cy, I think his name was. And he was talking about, I grew up in the 50s, in the 40s or whatever, like before, the civil rights era and everything. He's like, and in my memory, black people and white people got along just fine. I don't see what the issue was. And I remember saying that. And I was like, yeah, funny how that works, man. I'm sure they were very kind to you. I'm sure they were super nice. I can't wonder why that
was, just so great.
Yeah. And another thing he said was about the existence of Jesus was God. And he said, well, look, the one way that you can prove that Jesus is God, what year is it? It's 2004. It's 2004 years since when? Birth of Christ. There you go. And I'm looking, and I hear this shit, and you've heard arguments like this before. And it's like, I love, so we do talks and debates and everything. So I love like hearing strong, powerful arguments. They're fun. Even if I disagree with them, they're fun and they're interesting, but they are nowhere near as fun as a fucking shit ass horrible argument. Those are fascinating. I was like, how did like someone who's part of the same relatively intelligent mammalian species that I'm part of think of something so absurd, be convinced by it, and then say it out loud? Like, that stuff is amazing. You hear this all the time in these circles.
Yeah, it's really like they already know the answer. So give snappy responses to show me that I already know the answer, and I will latch onto it and eat it up like fucking pudding. Like, that's what they do. It's like, it sounds snappy, it sounds smart, it's over my head quite a bit. I already believe in this this premise, so you're just agreeing with what I've already like set up in my mind about what's true. And so that they just like that. And they think that, but it's really just like they're protecting themselves from outside perspectives with these like little like stupid
that just
arguments.
quips